We were talking, it was funny. We weren't even going to start the podcast, but it was so easy through Anchor. It's free. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or on your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more places. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the Stoned Age Living Podcast. This is your boy Life Locks. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Spotify at Stoned Age Living, minus the G. We appreciate you for coming through. All right, let's jump into our strain of the day, Lemon Haze. It was originally bred by Franco of Greenhouse Seed Company as a cross between Lemon Skunk and Super Silver Haze. Lemon Haze has been characterized as smelling of fresh peeled lemon slices with a similar taste. Its buds appear to be green and yellow with amber hairs on the trichomes, giving it the yellow tint. Jumping right into our first cannabis story today. Cannabis legalization is the key to economic recovery. The situation is reminiscent of what the country faced during the Great Depression nearly 100 years ago. At that time, one of the government's solutions was to end its 13-year experiment with alcohol prohibition. Today, the very same factors that caused the government to pull the plug on alcohol prohibition should result in the final nail in the coffin of the country's much longer sustaining but equally unjust policy of marijuana prohibition. Like today's enforcement of marijuana prohibition, alcohol prohibition famously clogged our criminal justice system with alcohol-related cases, many for relatively minor cases. The justice system was so overwhelmed that a large backlog of cases led to the emergence of the plea bargain, where defendants would plead guilty to a lesser offense in order for courts to clear throngs of cases in one fell swoop. The Canadian public companies like Canopy Growth, Tilray, and Aurora Cannabis enjoy valuations upwards of 10 times as high as their American multi-state counterparts, despite operating in a country where a population smaller than California alone exists. When legalization has been put before voters through state ballot initiative, it has passed 10 out of 11 times, demonstrating widespread support among the American public. Governors in Illinois, New Jersey, and New York have successfully campaigned on promises of legalization and have lobbied in their state legislatures to send them bills to sign that would end prohibition in their states. All right, now my first take on this story, this article, it's interesting that it was actually wrote on Forbes, but this article definitely pretty much creates the case for legalization that we all have thought in the back of our minds. As alcohol prohibition didn't work, we know that cannabis prohibition hasn't worked up to this point and has definitely clogged up our legal system. But our country, especially in these times during the pandemic, they are definitely highlighting and, I want to say, focusing on the issue in several different states as we get legal cannabis or medical cannabis even in New York, New Jersey, and we already have it in Illinois as the recreational as of this year. These are huge steps in the right direction. I mean, just probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were still in awe and shock about what was going on in Colorado. So this is definitely going to even itself out as we have the scale of legalization approaching several different countries, from Israel to Mexico to a lot of smaller countries in Africa. We're going to see legalization happen as it's inevitable. All right, jumping into our second cannabis story today. Studies suggest nation's healthcare providers need more education on medical cannabis. As public demand for cannabinoid therapies grow, healthcare professionals in the United States are ill-prepared to answer their patients' questions, according to a new study led by researchers at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. There have been several cannabis-based medications approved for use by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The most recent addition is Epidiolex for the treatment of intractable seizures. The UAB was a major site for the Epidiolex studies. They conducted a survey of U.S.-based neurologists, nurse practitioners, and pharmacists. There were 451 respondents. equally divided among the three professional groups. The survey consisted of 29 structured items that tapped into attitudes, knowledge regarding CBD therapies, medical cannabis more broadly, and recreational cannabis. The survey addressed perceived effectiveness of CBD medical cannabis, regulation and availability of products, and stigma associated with recommending CBD treatment. The knowledge domains covered the endocannabinoid system, pharmacology, effects, clinical applications, and government regulation. Of some concern was that a significant number considered themselves not knowledgeable at all about medical cannabis or were unfamiliar with issues related to regulation and availability of cannabis products. The test results showed gaps in knowledge. Between 26% and 68% answered a question incorrectly or didn't know the answer to a particular question. Our study suggests that many are not educated enough on medical cannabis to counsel their patients and recommend specific products or dosing. Thus, professional cannabinoid education nationwide is immensely needed. All right, my second talk here would be, we knew that our doctors were not properly educated on cannabis or the endocannabinoid system, so there's no surprise that they cannot properly advise their patients on, what strains or dosage, things like that. So not a thing that should be very comforting to most people, due to the fact that these are the people that are also going to be prescribing the prescription for your medical marijuana card also in most states. So it doesn't really make any sense. They never receive any of the endocannabinoid or the cannabis training as a doctor. And the only people that really receive this training are people who will Google it themselves, or people who actually receive some type of master certificate or some type of training or something like that from a cannabis school, such as maybe Cannabis Training University or something like that. Otherwise, you will definitely never find this knowledge in a standard curriculum at any school. All right, we will leave you with our weed fact number 7. The word marijuana may come from the Chinese ma ren hu, meaning hemp seed flower. This has been another episode of the Stone Age Living Podcast. Listen to hear LifeLocks cover the biggest cannabis headlines daily. Follow us at Stone Age Living on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, and anywhere else that you could possibly type it in. Tune in for cannabis news daily. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for checking in.